It might be February, but that doesn't mean that best ball is not already cooking. Before, after, during the Super Bowl, there are still hundreds of thousands of dollars to be made in best ball. And that is exactly what we are going to be doing here today in the War Room.
It's Short King Summer, dude. It just feels like no one in fantasy sports ever learns anything. Does he mistime it, or is Brock Bowers just a grown man? Brock Bowers is just a grown man. Dare I say, Rich, football might be back. In the words of Lane Johnson, this offense looks constipated. It's Short King Summer.
All right, folks, we are doing a little bit something different today. This is not a big board. This is not part of the road to $250,000. What it is it a draft in the War Room? But I'm going to use this to kind of walk you through some of the tips and tricks and how we should be approaching pre-draft best ball, because I think it's fairly easy to sit down in these rooms, think about what happened in fantasy last season, think about the drafts that took place in last season, and you tend to think of the market in a non-evolving sort of way. I think it's very easy to sit down in these rooms with the strategy that you had last year, and you just sort of mix and match. Oh, I like this stack last year. Let's carry this stack over. We are going to get very lucky, and we're going to take Justin Jefferson here at 1.4. We are drafting out of the 1.4. BHO Kevin, Neil Orfield, player Q is in here. Best Ball champion, Best Ball Mania 1 champion Justin Herzig is in here. Sacrilegious is in the room as well. As you would expect, very, very early on in these drafts, there are going to be some shark-infested waters. That really doesn't mean that you can't win. In fact, I think that there are some real angles to take in pre-draft best ball. The first being, there's just going to be a huge edge in having proper roster construction. What is proper roster construction? I guess it depends a little bit on who you take in the first round. You have a little bit of leeway there, but there's one key thing. These pre-draft best ball tournaments, they are 20 rounds. Those are 2 extra roster spots to deal with. So that gives us some real creativity on what we can do specifically at the onesie positions with quarterback and with tight end, based on both casual observation and in looking at some of the advanced rate things with some of the RotoViz tools and some of the analysis done at establishtheRun.com. One of the things that I feel pretty confident in is that the base structure that is most correct is going to be 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 wide receivers, and 3 tight ends. Now, does that mean that you need to do that at a 100% clip? Of course not. If you take Josh Allen early on, and then you end up taking Brock Purdy in the 9th round, do you need a 3rd quarterback? Absolutely not. Maybe you take Brock Bowers in the 2nd round, and then you get a really good price on a falling George Kittle. Do you need to take a 3rd tight end? I don't think so. Maybe you start with 5 running backs, 5 straight running backs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you need to take a 6th running back? I don't think so, but I think that should be your general guideline. If you think about a draft slot like you would think about auction dollars, you kind of want to have most of your auction dollars sitting in the wide receiver bucket. This is, of course, the great tool, the Draft Caddy. We can see my bucket targets here. I want to be in bucket 1 for wide receiver. I want to be in bucket 2 a quarterback, bucket 4 at tight end. Running back is the most important. Now, I have my settings in the Draft Caddy set towards 0 running back. You don't have to do that. Maybe you are fully bought in to the renaissance of the running back in the NFL. You want to do something similar to what Mr. Maragi did here at the turn, where he started with Devin Achane and Derrick Henry. I think that is effectively one of the biggest overreactions in fantasy football history, to just say, well, running backs did well last year. Underdog is a half PPR site, so I want to make sure that I'm winning running back every single week. Obviously, that neglects 2 things. The first being, you have to start 3 wide receivers every single week. And when a wide receiver hits your flex in FPPR, that generally means you ran very hot on touchdowns. The other being, history tends not to repeat itself. Just because the NFL went in one direction, if you skated where the puck was going with running backs last year, congrats to you. If you didn't, much like I did not skate to where the puck was going last year, then you're probably not having as good of a time. But I don't think that the puck is going to keep going in the exact same direction. I think that we are going to see some relatively large turnover. We have 2 choices at this draft slot. I think that we could do Tyreek Hill, who is the top by my rankings, or we could try and solidify our running back room. But we're going to try a real zero running back approach just to show you guys what I'm talking about. So we are going to select Tyreek Hill because this construction is not going to be popular. Maybe it would be a little bit self-selecting in this draft because there are members of the Davis Mattek Discord, members of this YouTube channel who are participating. These are people who are they're at the church of the wide receiver. They're very used to starting drafts in a zero running back fashion. But a lot of what I've seen, based on my observation, I've done 24 big boards as of the time of this recording, is that the rooms tend to kind of chicken out of zero running back. That maybe they start wide receiver, and they feel the need to add James Cook. You start wide receiver, then you take 2 running backs. Then you go, okay, I want Joe Mixon and I want Alvin Kamara with my next picks. And I'm not saying, keep in mind, this is very early. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with any of these starts, but the number one thing I am cautioning myself against and people who are drafting in these is don't overreact. Maybe not even overreact, just don't react too much to what took place last season. Just because running backs dominated scoring last season does not mean that running backs are going to dominate scoring now. Just because running backs stayed healthy last season does not mean that running backs are going to stay healthy now. For example, and we are going to select, by my rankings, it's JSN. By ADP, it is JSN as well. We are going to do a true zero running back experiment here. So if you look at the first 2 rounds, look at the running backs that we have here. Christian McCaffrey did not stay healthy. Jonathan Taylor did not stay healthy either. Now, he ended up being the guy that you needed in the playoff weeks, but he was not entirely healthy. Jahmyr Gibbs, he stayed healthy while his backfield mate, David Montgomery, got injured down the stretch. Devin Achane missed time with a concussion, and his quarterback missed time with a concussion. This is well-worn territory, obviously. But last year, I think the number one thing that is not going discussed, we all forgot the wide receiver injuries. We've all moved on in our macro analysis from what has happened in 2024 best ball. We forgot that Chris Godwin, Rashee Rice, all these guys, we forgot the season-ending injuries. We forgot that Mike Evans missed a month with a hamstring strain. Meanwhile, there were no season-ending injuries to running backs. Even Isaiah Pacheco broke his leg. He came back. The earliest drafted running back who suffered a season-ending injury before the best ball fantasy football playoffs, Zach Moss, who was the running back 33 in closing ADP. I mean, doesn't that feel a bit insane? For example, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving. This start, and I'm not meaning to particularly criticize any user, I'm just using it as an example. This start is going to leave this team so far behind in projected wide receiver points. Not to say you can't win. You know, I think last year we saw guys like Quentin Johnston, Adam Thielen, Rashad Bateman, I mean, even Marvin Mims in the playoff weeks have huge spike weeks that really impacted the fantasy football playoffs, that really impacted who won money and who advanced. But what you will learn the longer you play this is the value of those really high-end wide receivers, the value of a Justin Jefferson, the value of a Puka Nacua, the value of a CeeDee Lamb or an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those guys have such higher floors, and particularly what's important is they have a crazy high ceiling. Think about what a ceiling game would be for Quentin Johnston. Think about what, let's just look at a good 130-ish. Think about what a ceiling game would be for Romeo Doubs or Isaiah Bond or Christian Kirk. Good games, maybe even Christian Kirk actually does have a 3-touchdown game in his career, but by and large, a ceiling game there is, let's call it 22 half PPR points, 100 yards and a touchdown, maybe even 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, so you get to 24, 25. I mean, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb, they can double that. They can double that score in a game. They are such huge parts of their offenses. And what we've actually seen is as the NFL has gone away from true wide receiver ones, targets are more evenly distributed on individual teams, and teams are throwing less often, and they're throwing less often down the field. We are going to take Jameson Williams here to continue our experiment. You guys can tell me at the end, did I do good? Did I do bad? Do you hate this team? I mean, comment down below. If you want to tell me that I'm an idiot and that zero running back can never work and that the NFL has gone the other way, I'm all ears. I'm all ears. It's very early on in the process. I would love to learn. But, for example, if you did have Jameson Williams as your number one wide receiver, there are going to be weeks where your number one wide receiver doesn't even get 5 points. And there are also going to be weeks where Jameson Williams has a spike week, and it's not even particularly spiky. A spike week for Jameson Williams could be 25 points. It could be one of these absolutely massive games. It also could be 1 touchdown on 60 yards, which is a good game, but it's not a great game. Jameson Williams actually last season, he only had 3 games with more than 100 receiving yards. Doesn't that seem a bit crazy? His only multi-touchdown game came in what ended up being the useless, meaningless for the standings game against San Francisco, and he had 75 yards in that game. I'm not criticizing Jameson Williams. I just took Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams in half PPR, where touchdowns are the most important thing, I think he's an awesome pick. Do I think that the 2v2, for example, of, let's pretend this user, actually, let me make this pick here real quick. We are going to keep it going. I'm going to do it. We have Tyreek, so I'm going to take, we also have Justin Jefferson, so I'm not going to take Jordan Addison. We will, key part, actually, of zero running back is winning the onesie spots. So we are going to take George Kittle. And we're still going to have running backs we like. I promise you, we are still going to have running backs that we like. So let's do the simple 2v2. Let's pretend one of these users took Jameson Williams. So Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams versus DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson. Which side do you like better? Or let's pretend I took Alvin Kamara here. So let's pretend I took Alvin Kamara here. Justin Jefferson and Alvin Kamara versus Jahmyr Gibbs and Jordan Addison. I think you could hear reasonable arguments either way. I'm not saying that one is certainly better than the other, but I think that actually is the key distinction. I think one not being better than the other, that's not the way the market is treating it. The market has, I think the guys who are being overvalued are the Jacobs, are the Hubbards, potentially even the Kyron Williamses and the Chase Browns. Obviously, this is pre-draft best ball, and we are going to get so much more information when we head into Best Ball Mania 6 about the situations. Do the Rams take a running back? Well, if they don't, Kyron, straight to the moon. Do the Bengals take a running back? Well, if they do, you're not going to feel that great about Chase Brown. If they don't, I mean, there's probably an argument that Chase Brown, I mean, what is the difference in usage between Chase Brown and Devin Achane? Achane, I think, is certainly better than Chase Brown, but maybe not that much better. Maybe not whole worlds better. And I think that is fairly interesting. So we have begun the true zero running back journey here. We have selected through 5 rounds Justin Jefferson at pick 4, Tyreek Hill at pick 21, Jackson Smith-Njigba at pick 28, Jameson Williams at pick 45, and then we took George Kittle with our final selection in the 5th round, pick 52. We have set up JJ McCarthy with Justin Jefferson, Tua with Tyreek Hill, Geno very late, Jameson Williams we get to do with Jared Goff, who's a little bit expensive, and then Brock Purdy with George Kittle. A key element here, we are setting ourselves up in pre-draft best ball, where we are going to have 3 chances to stack, because we are very likely, unless we get a good value on one of the quarterbacks with some rushing upside, we are pretty likely to take 3 quarterbacks here. We can maybe only take 2 tight ends as well. Obviously, the thing that you run into is the bye weeks. The season, long time away. What if our 2 tight ends, let's call it George Kittle and David Njoku, what if they end up with the same bye week? It's certainly very possible. We are up in 1 pick. David Montgomery is there, who we can pair with our guy Jameson Williams, or Travion Henderson is there. I'm hoping that SN Rob does not take a running back here. He already has 3. He should be taking Luther Burden, potentially Jaden Reed, but we are going to be selecting one of these 2 guys. And the guy that we take is actually going to influence the texture of the rest of our draft. So we are going to take Travion Henderson here. What do I mean by it's going to influence the texture of our draft? Well, we need to court a little bit less certainty, or a little bit more certainty with some of our other running back picks. So let's pretend we are on the clock in round 10. What do we want to do? Do we want to take Ramondre Stevenson? Do we want to take Cam Scatterbu? Do we want to take Devin Neal, or do we want to take Blake Corum, right? These are not perfect one-to-one comparisons, but what we want to do is we want to be building in a little bit more role certainty. And also, we are for sure going to have to take 6 running backs, and we don't really want to be in a position where we end up with 6 rookie running backs, maybe not even 4 rookie running backs, actually, with this group of guys. Quinshon Judkins goes. So we are right now in a situation where we are maybe going to take our final wide receiver for like 10 rounds. We are about to start hammering tight ends, and then we are going to mercilessly hammer the running back position. The wide receivers are clearly the best values right now. I actually don't want to take Brandon Ayuk when we have George Kittle. I don't love like mega stacking the 49ers, potentially an unpopular opinion. We have no rookie wide receivers yet, so we certainly could get away with Agbuka. We could also take Jalen McMillan to set ourselves up with another quarterback. What we're going to do is we're actually going to take McMillan. We're going to court a little bit less certainty. We know what team McMillan's going to be on. We know there is a reasonable chance that with our next pick, actually with our next 2 picks, they might both be quarterbacks because Goff is going to be available, Purdy should be available, and Mayfield will potentially be available. We can solve our quarterback situation there. And the running backs, actually, at the next pick, it's very important to know these things when you get into the rooms. We're not going to love any of the running backs there. Even by ADP, there are not really running backs that go at our next 2 picks. We're looking at maybe Aaron Jones if he falls. I don't love Aaron Jones. J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Charbonnet, Travis Etienne, all guys with real question marks, but all guys who have been running back ones, right? So if you look at that list, these are 9th, 10th round running backs. We have had Aaron Jones has been a running back 1. Charbonnet has not been a running back 1 over the course of a season, but as running back 1 upside. Brian Robinson Jr. has been a running back 1. Travis Etienne has been a running back 1. Najee Harris has. It's been a long time, but he's done it. Isaiah Pacheco, I don't think, is a particularly strong pick, but he's getting to be a palatable price. J.K. Dobbins has been a running back 1. Probably not going to be a Charger, though he might be. Ramondre, I'm relatively out on. You guys can see I've got him ranked 112th. But again, a guy who has been a running back 1, compare them to the wide receivers in this range. I suppose Keenan has been a wide receiver 1, and so is Cooper Kupp. But a lot of guys who are on either the downside of their career, who are injured, who have massive role uncertainty. This is a range of wide receiver that I don't feel comfortable mining in. I actually think in these rounds, the tight ends and the quarterbacks, I mean, the round 8, 9, and 10 quarterbacks are so conducive to drafting this year. I think a lot of drafters are really into these expensive quarterbacks. We just saw my good friend Neil do the Jamar Chase at 1.2. He takes Joe Burrow. And obviously, Chase and Burrow, it was the stack you needed last year. It's a good stack, but I'm not really building a ton of my teams that way because I feel like the opportunity cost at quarterback this early is so massive. We do miss out on Baker Mayfield. Looks like Sacrilegious took him with Mike Evans. Gosh darn you, Sacrilegious. I suppose that I can forgive you, but I don't love making that trade-off. I think the quarterbacks in this range are so much better than the running backs and the wide receivers. These groupings of running backs and wide receivers feel a bit like they're just there by default. Like they're there because running backs and wide receivers have to be drafted and they need to go in some order. But I'm thinking about like, okay, what is the projectable difference between Michael Pittman Jr. and A.D. Mitchell, teammates? What is the projectable difference between Keon Coleman and Dontavian Wicks. They're very similar archetypes of players. And we could take Aaron Jones here and really impact our running back room well. We could take Jared Goff with JMO. Is there any reason to think that anyone behind us would take a Lion? Probably not. Aaron Jones goes anyway. Bo Nix is available. Well, let's take Goff first. So we're going to take Goff to pair with JMO. With our next pick, we could take Brock Purdy to pair with Kittle, or we could reach a little bit on a running back. We could take Charbonnet. We could take Dobbins. I think probably this might even end up being a 7 running back team, which, by the way, going back to the structure conversation, something that I've been thinking about. I did a stream with Liam earlier this week where he did some true, hero wide receiver teams. So we started wide receiver, and then absolutely pounded the running backs, then pounded wide receivers to end. He took, I think one team he took 11, one team he took 10. And my initial instinct was like, oh, I don't know if I like that. And I certainly would not make that a huge portfolio of my teams. But I think there is real value to be gained in having different textures of teams, of having some teams with 2 quarterbacks, some teams with 4 tight ends, some hyper fragile teams, 4 running backs. I start running back. I nutted it out. I got the best running backs possible on the board, and then I moved on. And I think that is a way both to de-risk, but also to sort of give your player takes a chance to be correct. Because something you definitely don't want to have happen is you don't want your player takes in the course of the season to be correct, but the way that you laid them out to kill you. So let's say you are Taylor, let's say Tyler Warren is the guy you absolutely had to have, but you took 30% Tyler Warren way above the field, but all your Tyler Warren teams have these giant structural grenades. So this is interesting. We have a big Bo Nix fall. We have Bo Nix unstacked, uncorrelated. Or we can jump a little bit on a running back. ETN would have been the one that I liked. Structurally, we just need the running back so much more. We are going to take Brian Robinson Jr., who is a little bit at risk of the Washington Commanders drafting a running back, right? A little bit at risk of them drafting a running back, but the Commanders have pretty massive needs, and Brian Robinson Jr. and Eckler were fine for them. They also got good production out of McNichols, and they even got decent performances when needed from Chris Rodriguez Jr. So if all of that is true, maybe Brian Robinson Jr. is a little bit more insulated than I think. And that, by the way, is some of the big mental math that you need to be doing in these drafts. What veteran running backs are isolated because of what their team needs versus which ones are not. So, for example, I don't think it's impossible that the Commanders take a running back. I don't think that they would take a running back in the 1st or the 2nd round. Certainly, potentially a 3rd or 4th rounder. How insulated is Chase Brown for the Cincinnati Bengals? They have a lot of needs. They need offensive line. They need secondary. They have a lot of guys that they need, but they probably don't want to play him 97% of the snaps the way they were doing last year. I like this move that Moods did here, where he took Jonnu Smith and Tyler Warren. I think that's pretty neat. I like doubling up. These got all these tight ends right here. Njoku, Jonnu, Warren, I think are all pretty appropriately priced. That is pretty early for Rashad Bateman. You can see how, so let's see how some of these early running back drafters have recovered. SN Rob starts Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, Jaden Daniels. Jordan Addison is his wide receiver 1. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State is his wide receiver 2. And he does not yet have a wide receiver 3. So weekly, he is going to be needing a score from multiple guys from round 10 on at basically the most important position in fantasy. Again, I would never disparage someone else, particularly not after my results in Best Ball Mania last year. But I don't know if that is what I would be most excited about doing with my own portfolio. And I wouldn't want to do a ton of teams like this either. I do think you give up a lot of the highest ceiling outcomes at running back when you pass on Gibbs, when you pass on, I would have taken Jonathan Taylor there, but even passing on Breece Hall, Breece Hall has overall, not even just player one, not just running back one, player one overall. And if that is true, then passing on him can kill you. I mean, Breece Hall could absolutely be, Breece Hall could be the guy you need in the regular season and in the playoffs, right? He could be both. So could Bucky Irving. I think James Cook. I mean, what if Ty Johnson does not re-sign with the team? Ty Johnson is an unrestricted free agent. Ray Davis doesn't really make a leap. I mean, James Cook could get Chase Brown level usage. And if he is getting Chase Brown level usage, then he could be the guy you need. And then we start getting into the range of like, well, can Tyrone Tracy be the guy you need? Can Quinshon Judkins be the guy you need? And you feel a little bit more confident that Tyrone Tracy could be the guy you need than Emeka Egbuka being the guy you need. But of course, these are all ranges of outcomes. So we still need another running back. We still need another quarterback. We are in a pretty interesting part of the draft here where values have started to really divorce, where everyone kind of quote unquote has their own board. And that's always kind of interesting. It's especially because there's really no reason to hew that closely to average draft position this early on. I was going to take Kelsey here, but I think our guy SN Rob is auto drafting, so we are not going to get Travis Kelsey. We do need a quarterback. None of the quarterbacks we quote unquote need are available. We still have time for McCarthy, still have time for Tua, still have time for Geno. So we can take Scadaboo here. We can take, you know what though? We need just a little bit, we need a little bit of ceiling here. So I'm going to take my guy, Devin Neal. Actually, I'm not. I just auto-drafted Spawn Diggs. So you guys all got to see the perils in real time of not having nimble fingers. I don't love Diggs. 32 years old, coming off the ACL. I've been moving him down in my ranks. He was top of the queue there. It is what it is, although it does give us another potential quarterback pair. We could take Stroud. Karain was telling me this most recent week he is basically not into Diggs at all. Liam was telling me that he was in. So there you have two Best Ball Mania winners. You have Liam Murphy, you have Pat Karain, and you can decide which one you like. I definitely was about to take Devin Neal there. Devin Neal is probably going to come around to me with this next pick, unless BHO Kevin, who is there in the Discord, ends up taking him. Travis Hunter also would have been an option there. Marvin Mims would have been an option there. Just acknowledging that at the end, I mean, wide receiver, some of these wide receivers, it once you get to the Wan'Dale Robinson, Demario Douglas range, you know that you're feeling down bad. Keenan Allen goes. Where else do we have? And actually, you could argue that Goff is a little bit overpriced, and perhaps I shouldn't be so woke on taking Jared Goff. But we are going to get, I guess we'll get Devin Neal or Tank Bigsby. Or potentially, I mean, this would be very early for Ollie Gordon, but sometimes you got to, all right, we are going to get Devin Neal. If you watch last week's video, you know, I'm really enthusiastic about Devin Neal. One of the reasons why I think you can get away with a zero running back build is that you can get guys like Devin Neal, like Ollie Gordon, like Rachaad White. I mean, I don't even like Rachaad White, but he's just a good handcuff running back. Tyler Algier, really good handcuff running back. Ray Davis, Kendre Miller, Brashard Smith. I suppose a lot of your early strategy in these drafts is going to be related to what do you think about this incoming rookie running back class? Do you think that this rookie running back class is as good as people say? Do you think it is markedly worse than what people are saying? I tend to think it probably is one of the better running back classes that we have seen. Now, the 2017 running back class, that is truly legendary, and that is kind of what you have to stare it up against. That was a draft class with Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, James Conner, Samaje Perine. I mean, even Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen was huge in that class. You know, it's Wayne Gallman stuck around. Jamal Williams led the NFL in touchdowns. Jeremy McNichols was just playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. Brian Hill had a stint. Aaron Jones is still a starting running back in the NFL right now. Donta Foreman started NFL games last season. Like this, it's really an unbelievably good running back class. Like it just that kind of star power, staying power. It had guys at the top, it had guys in the middle, and it had your contributing types. You know, your Perine types, your McNichols types, all guys who were like a little bit relevant. That's what we talk about when we talk about potentially a running back class being that good. And frankly, I think this running back class can be that good. I think Genty, probably not as good as Christian McCaffrey, but probably he could be, I mean, certainly he could be as good as Fournette ever was. He can be as good as Dalvin Cook ever was. Probably, again, maybe not quite as good as Kamara was at the absolute highest range of Kamara's career. But then you have plenty of guys like Caleb Johnson could be better than James Conner ever was. Travion Henderson can be better than Joe Mixon's best season. Quinshon Judkins can be better than any of these guys, you know, and there are also a lot of guys on the fringes who I just expect to be contributors. A lot of contributors are available at the running back position. We are going to select Tua with this next pick to do our stack. I mean, I guess you don't have to do it this way, but we will be playing like Tyreek Hill is going to be on the Miami Dolphins. Doesn't necessarily mean he is going to be on the Dolphins. Sometimes you have to create your own little fictional universe. But I am saying I am not going to be I'm not going to be surprised if the scouts who are that high on this rookie running back class end up being correct. And there has been some pushback. I know that that Lance Zierlein mentioned in one of his most recent media appearances that he doesn't feel that this rookie running back class is all that cut out. You're going to get some Ashton Genty dissenters. You're going to get some Quinshon Judkins dissenters. But I tell you, this class it runs deep. Maybe that is the more appealing thing about it, particularly from our purposes in fantasy football, is it runs so deep. I'm about to make a selection in the 13th round at 148. The guy I'm going to take, assuming that Jared O 413 does not take him, we're going to take Ollie Gordon. So Ollie Gordon, maybe you don't watch a lot of college football. Maybe you're just learning about all this stuff right now. Ollie Gordon was the best running back in college football, not last season, but 2 seasons ago. He finished 7th in the Heisman voting. He had 324 touches, including 39 receptions, 2,062 scrimmage yards, 22 touchdowns in that unbelievable season. He also did it for a good team that won a bunch of games. He smashed against Cincinnati. He smashed against Oklahoma. He smashed against Houston, against BYU. He had 27 for 118 and 1 against Texas A&M, an SEC team that beat Alabama. Like, I just think that whatever happened with Ollie Gordon last year in his final season, and it was not good. Oliver Gordon's final season at Oklahoma State was really bad. He caught fewer passes. His yards per contact average went down. Everything went down. The team was terrible. You could argue that part of the reason the team was terrible was because Ollie Gordon was much worse and he was much less reliable. But effectively, if he is 90% of the guy that he was in 2023, or if some team believes that he's 90% of that guy, or there's an explanatory variable, he was injured. He did have a DUI before the start of the 2024 season. I have heard that mentioned as potentially a reason for an altered performance from him. I think it's sort of a generational buy low, because as a prospect, if you cut that year out, you are looking at a guy who looks a lot closer to the Genty tier of player than you would be to a guy who looks like he is a 14th round pick, 13th round pick in the big board. And I want to be taking lots of shots on guys like that, because the thing that matters, particularly when you're doing a zero running back team, and we already, I did my floor guys, right? I took Brian Robinson. We are going to have to take a couple more floor guys. This could be a team for, actually, we could take Austin Eckler. We could take both of them, which would be, that would be one way of trying to protect yourself. Could be a team for Braylon Allen, could be a team for, Kendra Miller, I think, is just a phenomenal pick. Could be a team for Javonte Williams. Could be a team for Justice Hill, some of these veteran-style guys. The sidekick is absolutely on it, though. Justin Fields is clearly the pick for us here. We are going to select Justin Fields, so our quarterback room is done. We don't have Fields stacked, but man, we don't care. Because if Justin Fields starts, that's all you need. If Justin Fields starts in 2024, Justin Fields as a fantasy starter, outside of his rookie year in Chicago, he was just so good for fantasy. You're basically just, and at this price, at 165th overall, we don't even really care if he doesn't start that often, right? So last season, his rushing, these were his rushing games. Against the Raiders, 11 rushes, 52 yards, 2 touchdowns. 6 for 27 against Dallas, 10 for 55 and 2 against Indianapolis. Only 6 yards and a touchdown against the Chargers. 8 for 27 against Denver. 14 for 57 against Atlanta. That will be the most rushing upside. That's more rushing upside than Richardson has. Richardson's all about the touchdowns. He doesn't add the yards and the same pure open field athleticism. That will be the best rushing profile of any quarterback from Jaden Daniels to here. He could certainly be, he could lead quarterbacks in rushing if he starts. Sidekick is asking for Ertz. I think we probably need to kick the can on tight end. We need to nab a running back here. We are going to add a very boring pick, but we're going to take Rachaad White. He did finish the season on a downturn, that's true. But Rachaad White now, I think, can transition himself to being a high, I think certainly a high upside handcuff, right? So if Bucky Irving misses any time, Rachaad White should ostensibly be ahead, and I think will be ahead of Sean Tucker. Could the Buccaneers add someone? Yeah, they probably could. In the playoff loss to the Washington Commanders, though, it wasn't as if Rachaad White did not get on the field in that game. They only played 48 snaps on offense. Rachaad White played 18 of them. Bucky Irving played 33 of them. Sean Tucker did not get on the field. Again, I'm not windmilling in Rachaad White, and I don't think you should windmill in Rachaad White. I think what you should be doing at these later rounds, you take a little bit of Braylon, you take a little bit of Rashad, you take a little bit of Roschon Johnson, and we can evolve with new information. Certainly, if it becomes clear that maybe Rachaad White signs a contract extension, I don't even know if he's eligible to do it, but we will get more information in general, and we can use that information to draft these teams, right? And you also are going to want your portfolio to be changing as we get through. Maybe I'm just speaking from my own perspective, but I don't have a great idea of what the 2025 NFL season is going to look like. I know some things. I know that Justin Fields is going to run a lot. I know that I think Devin Neal has a great skill set if he gets drafted highly. I know that Brian Robinson Jr. is going to score 8 touchdowns. And I know that I like and I think Jalen McMillan's good. But there's a lot that we don't know. And rather than trying to be increasingly certain in an area that we don't know, I think I'm just going to try and be water. A great example of this was when drafts started last offseason. all the way back in January, all the way back in February of 2024. My teams look a lot different than they did in Best Ball Mania. Now, I did a couple things that were very funny. I took like 80% of Dylan Laube. I took him last in every draft. I took Jalen. I had 85% of Jalen McMillan in the big board last year, which that ended up being good. The Dylan Laube, running back for Las Vegas Raiders, not nearly as good. But I had 24% of Xavier Worthy before he was even a Chief, right? And I had a lot of A.D. Mitchell. And I think allowing yourself, okay, we can probably start thinking about taking another wide receiver here. We can also take a tight end. No reason for me to take Gunnar Helm here. We could take, actually, we are going to save. I'm going to take Javonte Williams. We need another adult running back. Javonte is either going to be like kind of in the same role he was in on the Broncos, which is not a great role, but not the worst role in the world for this price, or they might let him go. Maybe he's a Chief. Maybe he's a Bengal. You don't know. But I do think Javonte is the type of guy who is going to get chances. He could kind of have a Jamal Williams type resurgence in his career, I think. But the point that I was making was that my exposures evolved. And you can also use, the post-draft stuff to hedge out, or you can just start to change how you're building teams now. You're like, oh, I was really hot and heavy on Savion Williams when the draft opened. But there's no reason to be hot and heavy on Savion Williams now, because the guy who got all the pub at the Senior Bowl was Jack Besh. People have already invoked the name of Puka Nacua. You got to be pretty good. You got to be pretty physical to invoke the name of Puka Nacua. By the way, it is very nice to do these drafts knowing that no one can hear me. I mean, they'll be able to hear it later, but I'm just going to take Mr. Besh right here, and assuming I don't get sniped. Really interesting player, Mr. Jack Besh. He was basically a tight end at LSU, played with, all the crazy, amazing players who were at LSU. He was teammates with Brian Thomas Jr. He was teammates with Kyron Lacey, who maybe would get drafted here, but had the manslaughter incident. Teammates with Kayshon Boutte, actually had more receptions than Kayshon Boutte and Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors in 2021. Is that interesting to you? That Jack Besh was teammates with Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Kayshon Boutte, and Trey Palmer of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, more receptions and actually more yards than Brian Thomas Jr. and Neighbors as well when Max Johnson and Garrett Nussmeier was the quarterback in 2021. I think that is pretty interesting. I need to refresh my legendary upside window there. My sidekick window, we got it refreshed. He was the absolute star of the Senior Bowl. And I mean, probably just the most important thing as it relates to him is that it seems that NFL teams are starting to buy into it. We could see him being, I think we could see him being a second-round pick, actually, provided that he comes in and does the combine. I mean, we haven't even talked about the combine yet. That is going to be the big inflection point. Obviously, free agency and the combine are going to be the most massive inflection points of the big board. And you guys should be reacting as they come in, but maybe you have a read right now. And I would encourage you guys to be exploiting those reads right now. Like, I think Savion Williams, who, again, I started out drafting pretty heavy, like right when the contest opened. I think Savion Williams is going to have an awesome combine. I think he might run like a 4.3, like maybe like a 4.38 at 224 pounds. Like, it's going to be unbelievable. Maybe you think De'Ami Brown, I don't know, who could he sound? The Bengals, maybe. Maybe you think Tez Johnson, who weighs 156 pounds, is going to run break Xavier Worthy's 40 record time. Like, I think all of that is pretty interesting. And you want to be skating to where the puck is going a little bit. So we do have Jared Goff with JMO, Tua with Waddle, Fields unstacked, Travion Henderson, Brian Robinson, Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon, Rashad White, Javonte Williams, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jackson Smith and Jigba, JMO, Jalen McMillan, a Steph Diggs misclick, which I'm okay with. Jack Besh and George Kittle. We definitely need another tight end. Herzig. We'll look at Herzig and Sacrilegious's teams before we get out of here. Probably just going to end up doing your very standard 3-6-8 build. There actually is a wide receiver that we're going to be taking in the 20th round, maybe a Jalen Tolbert style career for this guy. We definitely need a tight end. So I think what we'll do is we'll take one of the vets who's just going to be out there, and then we are also going to take one of these rookie tight ends. We are going to take, assuming he did not go, and maybe I missed it, did Mason Taylor go already? Mason Taylor got drafted already. So we're instead going to take another guy that I want to highlight on the channel, and I have not yet made a video about him. We're going to take Gunnar Helm at the 18.9. So Gunnar Helm, very similar to Beck, actually played with some unbelievably talented college players. He was behind Jatavian Sanders at Texas, and then ended up being the starting tight end. Actually ended up starting over a guy who transferred in. So this young man by the name of Amari Niblack, who had 20 receptions for 327 yards and 4 touchdowns at Alabama in 2023. Just to give you a sense there, he was teammates with Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton. Those are some of the guys he was sharing, and he was third on the team in receiving there. Amari Niblack got benched for our dude Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm led Texas in receptions, was second on the team in receiving yards, was second on the team in receiving touchdowns. We are on the clock here real quick, and I'm going to take Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson is who I am going to pair with Justin Fields. We can talk a little bit about that more in a second as I continue to go on Gunnar Helm. But Helm had more receiving production than Isaiah Bond, who is probably going to be a second-round pick. Was honestly not that far away from outproducing Matthew Golden and had more pure receptions than him. And on Mac Draft Database, Gunnar Helm is expected to be a second or third round pick. I think that he, Mason Taylor, and Elijah Arroyo are all really good final round selections. A quick bit on Roman Wilson. Basically, Roman Wilson just never had a chance. He got injured early on. He had the high ankle sprain. The Steelers are very good at drafting wide receivers. I mean, that is just real. They are very good at drafting wide receivers, but Roman Wilson never had a chance. He was on the injured reserve. And I think obviously, this information is going to come too late for us, but we're going to learn a lot about what the Steelers think about Roman Wilson based on what they do in the draft and in free agency. If they do nothing in the draft, they really like Roman Wilson. If they only do, a round 5 wide receiver and they sign Noah Brown in free agency, I think they like Roman Wilson. If they trade for Cooper Kupp or sign Cooper Kupp, they probably don't love Roman Wilson. If we hear that they offer Chris Godwin, they offered a match whatever the Buccaneers give him, then they probably don't love Chris Godwin. Let's see what our friends have cooking. So Neil drafted Joe Burrow, Matt Stafford, Derek Carr, Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins, Cam Scatterbo, Trey Benson, Tyler Algier. I like that running back room. Chase with Burrow, Roman Dunze, Luther Burden, Rashid Shaheed, Keenan Allen, Wandale, A.D. Mitchell, Deontay Johnson, Trey McBride, David Njoku, and Taysom Hill. So no stack with Stafford and the Shaheed stack with Carr. Neil, I like that team. That is pretty strong. Let's see what Herzig cooked. Love, Stroud, Penix. Running back room of McCaffrey, Kyron, Mixon. Huge value on Mixon there. Jerome Ford, Austin Eckler, Justice Hill. Very, very Herzigian running back room. You look at it and you're like, that's a lot of old guys. And then Herzig absolutely smokes you with them. A lot of value there. I think that is that's a running back room that's going to score a lot of points, but not a lot of style points, if that makes sense. And then Herzig's wide receivers, Nico, Devonta, Debo, Ridley, Downs, Pittman Jr., Darius Slayton, Ray McLeod, Tucker Kraft, Zach Ertz, and Dalton Schultz. Not a rookie on the team. Herzig's pretty good at this. The rookies are mostly overpriced right now. They're overpriced in the aggregate. Obviously, there will be some that are not. And with our final pick, we already got our rookie, so we need to eat our vegetables a little bit. We are going to take Noah Fant, who is, I think, probably, well, actually, we're going to take Juwan Johnson. We're going to take Juwan Johnson, who can either be a Denver Bronco or just a New Orleans Saint again, but a very good 20th round pick. Let me finish looking at Herzig's team. Yeah, Herzig, no rookies because the rookies are overpriced in the aggregate. Obviously, they are not overpriced in the specific. So some of these rookies, I don't know, could be, could be DJ Giddens, could be Devin Neal, could be Brashard Smith. Some of these guys are going to be underpriced by 100 picks. That is just the name of the game. And then finally, let's look at Sacrilegious's team. Sack did a 3.773. Baker Mayfield, Caleb Williams, Sam Darnold. He got Genty, Hampton, Kamara, Charbonnet, Mason, Brashard Smith, Damian Martinez, Malik Neighbors, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Jacoby Myers, Trey Harris, Christian Kirk, Alec Iomanore, Jake Ferguson, Kate Otten, and Mason Taylor. Of course, he took Mason Taylor. Gotta say, I quite like Sacrilegious's team. He got Baker and Mike Evans. He got Caleb and DJ Moore. And he got Sam Darnold with, well, depending on your perspective, right? Depending on your perspective on old Sam Darnold there. I don't particularly love how my zero running back build turned out. Not great, not terrible. We have a Goff stack. We have a Tua stack. Goff with JMO, Tua with Tyreek, theoretically. Justin Fields at pick 165. Running back, probably just a little too rookie heavy. When you start with Travion, and you maybe even need to take a 7th running back. So we have Henderson, Brian Robinson Jr., Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon, Rachaad White, and Javonte. Rachaad White and Javonte are so Spider-Man pointing meme at this time. Wide receivers, I'm a little bit worried about your running backs. I do like your wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jamison Williams, Jalen McMillan, Stephon Diggs. After ADP, don't love it, but fine. Jack Besh, who I do quite like. Roman Wilson, who I don't love, but I do like stacking with Fields. Tight ends of George Kittle, Gunnar Helm, and Juwan Johnson. I'll give my team a C+, but I hope that you guys use that kind of as a general guide to just what is going on. What is the deal with pre-draft NFL fantasy football? I mean, if you're new to the channel, come on, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Consider becoming a member on the channel. We talk about fantasy football all the time in the Discord. You get all kinds of members-only content, some cool emojis, some members-only videos that we are planning for the remainder of the summer. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and thank you very much for watching.
It's Short King Summer, dude. It just feels like no one in fantasy sports ever learns anything. Does he mistime it, or is Brock Bowers just a grown man? Brock Bowers is just a grown man. Dare I say, Rich, football might be back. In the words of Lane Johnson, this offense looks constipated.